Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Coding to Think. On this channel or podcast, depending on where you're listening from, I engage with different tech industry experts to learn from their stories and journeys. With me today, I've got Monet. Monet has got a lot of experience in the tech industry, working as a designer and user experience specialist. He's helped a lot of clients build great products and even managed to build a product of his own, which is a game, Plain Crazy. And yeah, this was really an insightful episode. I learned a lot from it, and I hope you will too. Monet, how's it going? How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Tatsi. It's also a pleasure, and thank you for the platform. I appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoy all your sessions with all the other individuals. So 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 thank you.
That's great to hear. Thanks. So yeah, Monet, tell us a bit about yourself and your journey towards becoming a a user experience specialist and a designer. What has that journey been like? Take us through that.
Yeah. So look, it started pretty much when I was still studying graphic design at the University of Nelson Mandela. And I didn't know that user experience and user interface design existed. Um, at the time, there was a certain phone. I remember it was a little, very small Alcatel phone, silver, I recall. It was the first it had very rich multimedia animations on it. It just was something different in the market at the time, and I always thought I would love to design for these devices. It only happened 10 years thereafter, though. So after completing my graphic design diploma, I worked in the industry for about 5 years as a graphic designer. And at one point, I remember it was 2008, 2009, when suddenly you had these touch phone devices. I remember HTC with a Microsoft mobile version of the OS on the HTC phone. And then very soon thereafter, it was Apple's iPhone that obviously revolutionized touch devices as we know it today. So that sparked the idea even more. I then started while I was working at a freelancing actually at the time. I started looking for gigs to enhance my mobile skills or to design for mobile, and I happened to land one. And it was, I remember, an iOS tablet iPad app that the client wanted, and I fleshed out the journey for them. And I actually did more than just the iPad interface or
Yeah,
app. I started asking the questions, okay, but what happens from a management point of view? So I also looked at it from a management. What does the manager's interface look like? Because there were different role players for that matter. The customer. In that case, it was actually the merchandiser, and then surely there's management involved. So I created that interface as well, and I started enjoying exactly that experience. You telling how I design is I look at it as a story, as a book. Um, you have your book in the software world. Your book or your story is the goal or the functionality, and your characters could be how to enable the functionality. And that's how I pretty much look at design when we are now in the phase of design. But
mm,
that's where it started. It snowballed from there. I then ended up at a corporate as a. They didn't know what to employ me as, but I was employed as a graphic designer. However, we were purely doing mobile apps,
mm,
whether it was iOS, Android, feature phones, Windows 8, tablets, Android tablets, phones, all sorts of devices. So that's where I now finally got an idea of user experience and user interface design. What I must say is where I studied, they concentrated a lot on the elements or principles that's out there in terms of design thinking today. So it kind of tapped into that side of my studying, and it wasn't too difficult for me to understand this whole thing of design thinking, for instance. Um, so that's where my story started. I was there at that corporate for about 3 years, and I thoroughly loved it. I enjoyed it to the max. I evolved into this almost like a product designer role because and I also fed into other departments. I started leveling up other designers on the team. I sort of got this unofficial role to manage them. I hate the word manage, but I just ended up helping and fit into the wider organization. And then I ended up at ThoughtWorks 3.5 years thereafter. That's where I met you, Tsatsi. We worked together.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm at a different company today, a couple of years down the line. Telecommunications, interesting world. Lots of problems to solve, lots of challenges. So that's where I find myself today.
Ah, cool, cool. So, yeah, tell me a bit about the design roles, because there's uh, you touched on it a bit, but then there's something that still confuses me even today when it comes to the different titles that designers have. You have um, we before we had UX designer, you had UX UI designer. Now I see a lot more companies using the title product designer. Are there any differences in the that in the work that the different design roles play? And are you able to explain or yeah explain a bit about what some of the career paths are within design?
So the obvious differences is if I can start with user experience, UX, and
Mm,
UI, interface design. On
mm,
the UX side, you it's about that emotional experience. It's about the experience. It's about that interaction with the product, with the app, with the website.
mm,
Um, and on the flip side, you've got UI or user interface design, where you see. So the one is about feeling and
mm,
the experience, which is user experience, and the other one UI is about what you see and what you interact with.
yeah,
There is a blur. There's definitely a blur, and for good reason. Um, there is also visual design. There is also CX design. There's a whole bunch of specialities
yeah,
in the corporate world, as you know. And I think one of your interviewees also mentioned that it's then you also get the product designer, and it's almost like you have this T-shaped designer or career path where this is me personally as well, where I know have where I've dabbled across user interface, visual design, graphic design, um, user experience design, customer experience design.
mm,
Um, so I know a little bit of of those expertise, but my speciality is user experience design, and there I go very deep with my knowledge and my practices. So there is a the confusion is around the blurring of the fields of the expertise or the disciplines, but it's from a if you're within an agile team, if all of those disciplines are on the team, it
Mm-hmm.
just benefits the outcome.
Mm,
You all work together because it also forces people to work together.
mm.
Um, and that's pretty much the differences between the disciplines.
All right. Cool. Cool. And what are some of the challenges that you've seen designers face? I know um, tech is forever changing, right? And there's always something new that we have to learn. Um, and I'm speaking from a personal point of view as a developer. That as a developer, one of the challenges we face is to having to continually transform and evolve ourselves as with different technologies that make their way into the marketplace, and trying to figure out better ways to solve problems. So for designers, what are some of the challenges that you think designers face? And if you do you have any advice for up and coming designers out there that might be facing similar challenges?
Yeah, so there are a couple that I noticed straight off the bat within where I work currently, and and I actually started a series called UX Learnings, User Experience Learnings, where I try to help other designers on the team in terms of ways of working in a way where I help or give tips on challenges that any designer face on the team. One of the latest ones that I've just had, one of the sessions was working together with other disciplines on your team. As an example, your business analyst. There's often this battle almost between business analyst and user experience design and vice versa. And talking about blurring the lines, that often also happens, hence the two disciplines encroaches over one another's expertise. And it's so some of the tips, the seven top tips I give in such a case is you need to give and it's about give and take, right? Firstly, that's a my view is it's a misconception. There isn't beef, it's a misunderstanding of one's disciplines. Um, and if you can understand, and it's about give and take. If the business analyst would like the button to be blue, and you should compromise in terms of if it doesn't hamper the user experience, then give that blue color to the business analyst. And the point there is that you gain some confidence of the business analyst or any other person on the team. And the next time you'd like to um, motivate for bigger change from a user experience perspective, I can almost guarantee you that you'll have that person's buy-in, whichever stakeholder it is. The other one is you involve your stakeholders um, early in your design process. It mustn't come to a shock for that business owner or product owner or any managing exec or EHOT that suddenly there's this thing. You're going to get a lot more slack that way. Rather involve them early enough. Um, the other tips I also have is don't make emotional decisions, right?
Mm,
Often we on the team and throw our toys out the cot and don't make your decisions based on that. As a user experience designer, motivate for change remember, you've got these design thinking processes. You understand, you build, you prototype, you test, you analyze, and you follow the cycle again. Um, so part of make use of those practices like yours. When you want when you want change to happen, motivate with things like your user testing results, um, and also the way you test your prototypes. Don't think of those high fidelity prototypes as final. Think of them as throwaways. That you almost want to distance yourself in a way from what you've created. It is very difficult, but don't get too emotional about it. If you treat it that way, it, anybody coming on, another designer coming on the team, should it should be a handover, and that designer can quite easily do make changes on it if the changes are sound, customer use and user change, related changes that would benefit the customer and the user for that matter. Um, those are some of the tips I recommend. The other big one is for me the ability to articulate your design or translate your design to an audience. Often, what I am seeing is the almost like the inability to effectively communicate the screen that people are looking at. And once you don't effectively communicate, you could end up having multiple meetings thereafter and people being unhappy. Meanwhile, it's a matter of, yes, it is two ways. The members on the team should be focused, right? And I'm assuming that they will be focused. But as you know, with the situation we're at, working within COVID situation, people are at home, there's children, there's noise. Sometimes it can become chaotic, so you don't always have a very focused Monet or very focused Tsatsi or very focused label. And 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 I think that is another reason. That's another example of what you could do.
Mm, mm,
So those are some of the tips that I give out
mm, mm,
to such challenges. There are a few others. The other one I just discussed 2 days ago. I had a session on it, was creativity within an agile team.
mm,
Now, as you know, we work in sprints, and a sprint could be 1 week, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 2 weeks. And it becomes, and we all have and the outcome is quite clear what we would want uh, from an asset point of view. At the end of the sprint, we produce, let's say, a logging screen. So it's very focused. It's clear what we need to. It's time boxed. So it becomes sometimes difficult for the designer to be creative within that 2 weeks. One of the tips I do give is, you don't always have to design a screen. Um, for you don't for all those use cases, if we know what a button looks like, a primary button looks like, and a secondary button looks like, what does a form field look like? Those are the almost the atoms the developer needs to advance the project. So you don't necessarily have to create the, otherwise you're going to end up with thousands of screens anyways. The idea is to give just enough screens, I call it, to the developers once it's briefed in, once you have your test checks, etc. Um, and that frees you up a bit as the designer. One less screen or two less screens mean that you don't perhaps have to attend two other meetings, because that happens in the workplace. And which leads me to my next point. If you can avoid, you don't always have to be in all the meetings. That's another way to free up time for you to be creative. Now that you, let's say, gain some time, Let's say you've gained some 8 hours or 2 days in the sprint. What are you going to do with the 2 days, right? And this is another tip I give. Put your hand up, right? There's many things in a big organization. There's many problems, and it could also be outside of your necessarily your team that you're working within. It could be how do we improve the e-commerce process, and you can work on such a unofficially on such a design. Um, that doesn't mean you can't push for the design to be implemented. It's just that you just need to go through the proper channels. I would say, as you know, in corporate, it becomes very tricky to maneuver outside of your teams necessarily. That is some of the other tips I can give to other designers.
Yeah.
There are more coming in the series, but those are the ones that I see often happen. The ability to communicate is key. It's high. I see that one happening a lot, lacking a bit from designer to designer.
Mm.
How you translate your design, how do you communicate it to the wider audience, how do you stay creative on the team. That's often another challenge that designers have. They often complain about it. I don't have interesting work, but
Mm.
you also you've gotta put up your hand. You know when you do, and I'm a firm believer of side gigs as well.
Mm.
I've learned a lot more during such, and I bring that into the team quite honestly, and everybody actually benefits. The company benefits, um, and it's which leads to the next step. You need to be curious all the time. It's through curiosity which led me to this game, Plain Crazy Game,
Yeah.
um, which
Yeah.
I can answer or talk on a bit in a bit.
Now, actually, that is. Tell me a bit more about that, because Crazy Planes, the game. What inspired that? Because I had it installed on my iPhone, and I really enjoyed it. Uh, but yeah,
So the game,
I've always been curious about what inspired you to create the game, and what was your process like? Because obviously, uh, is the process different of designing a game from um, designing a system?
so the game is called Plain Crazy Game,
Mm.
and it happened one day. We were still living in a complex, right?
Mm.
So this particular day, my one daughter, she was about 3 years old, and we sat outside, and I made a jet for her, and
Uh,
she started playing with the jet, throwing it in the air, and before you know it, I had literally 10 to 12 kids surrounding me, and they were in the eldest one was probably 11. So there were a range of age groups: 11, 9, 5, 4. So a bunch of girls and boys all playing together. So it surprised me that they didn't know how to make a jet, like a paper plane.
yeah,
I had to literally fold, and they were looking and they were excited, and I literally folded for them these jets for them, and they had loads of fun. That sparked the idea. It made me think, okay, how can I help these kids how can I educate them in making these jets? Um, and Playing Crazy was born from that. That goal hasn't been reached right now within the version you see in the iOS App Store. Um, that functionality will come through in a next phase where we involve augmented reality. Um, so the game, the first we met, and I must give credit, Tsatsi, to another former colleague of your and I as well, Edmund. So credit Edmund to Edmund.
yeah,
So that's
Edmund. Mm-hmm.
So let me tell you what happened there and his involvement. So in the TW office, I had a screenshot of the game on my computer on the laptop, and Edmund so passed by and he asked me, "What is that on your computer?" So I said to him, "It's a game that I actually would like to develop." And I showed him the interfaces, the characters, the illustrations, and it caught his eye. And he said, "Guess what? Right now I'm playing in that gaming field, and I'm looking for a project. Let's build it." And we built it. So since life has become a bit, you know, quite busy, we there's loads to come for the game, but it's challenging at the moment because of work.
Yeah.
And but what I have also done on my end is continuous marketing,
Mm.
right? Because you
Mm.
have to market your product.
Yeah.
And this is the experience I gained from working in that very first company,
Mm.
where I worked there and I evolved into a product designer, if you could call it that. Um, that made me realize that this it's not just it's a service, whether and that service has different touch points, whether it's a website, an app, whether it's social media, whether it's marketing on a T-shirt. So it encompasses all that spheres, and pretty much answering your earlier question around the product designer. It's about launching a product versus a working on a project. So it's product over project kind of a situation. So yeah, there's loads to come still. Um, we are looking at bringing fresh eyes. So if there's people out there, come help us. Come help us. We essentially ported the game over to Unity engine, gaming engine.
Yeah.
But we need to now get the new environments. There's new environments and new functionality coming. Um, but that has been where we were stuck due to work scenarios and work situations.
Yeah. When you told me that you were building a game, and because I remember when you started, you had the screenshots of the initial designs, and when it actually became reality, yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. And I know there was other projects as well that you worked on, like there were the was it the hotspot one, which you wanted to mark hotspots for, is it crime hotspots or something like that?
So that one we kind of shelved
Mm.
because I took too long to take it to market.
Yeah.
Um, Other products or services came about.
Mm.
So there are currently loads of those services out there in forms of an app or website. Um,
Mm.
what I have started looking at is how to spin that same service off to a different market for that matter. So remove the word crime, and suddenly you've got another solution for a different market.
Mm.
But one only has so much time in a day, so much time in a week, and a month, and a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
These things, so that one I've shelved. There is I've realized, because of exactly that, one has to be laser focused on what you would like to do or achieve. So on playing crazy game side, that's going to be a continuous evolution of the game.
Mm.
What I'm currently trying to do right now there is trying to get in other developers, other designers, also to level them up, skill them up, working on the project. And I think that is important for me from a human being point of view. I I'm the kind of person that would like that share my information, that share my knowledge,
Yeah.
um, and I think it's important that we do that, that we create a level playing field from a knowledge point of view, for instance, because that will just take us and the world and the country right now a bit further, a lot further, and hopefully eradicate inequality. Because I believe, I'm a firm believer, and sometimes where we find ourselves in our workplaces, you in my brain sometimes it's a conflict.
Mm,
It's almost like, we yes, we're making a pile of money. That journey I worked on, that function I worked on, the conversion rate is super high. I'm checking the analytics, it's great. But from a humane point of view, what have I done? What I call it responsible design, right? have
mm,
i have I been responsible to my fellow neighbor, to the kid in the street that doesn't even have shoes or food or a shelter? How can I enrich their lives? And those are some of the other matters I'm looking at. I don't have an answer for them yet, but I'm trying to articulate the problem, and I'm trying to look at. You can't tackle all of them, so I'm trying to look into one area and to articulate that problem statement. So I'm very low down design thinking terms still. I'm trying to still formulating the problem because it's so complex, yet it is easy at the same time.
mm,
Um, so that is one over and above. That is something that is overarching my mind when I go to sleep as well.
mm,
But other than the game, there's the other one that I'm working on is for properties. So something in the space, within the property space. It's exciting. Again, my big challenge is indeed resources, right? But we've made some progress. And what I'm trying to do is I realize that I want to bring on more entry level people so that they can learn. I don't want to call them entry level, but the benefit of people coming straight out of the university, they don't have they have time on their hands versus you and I that don't necessarily have time on our hands. And
yeah.
the benefit is we are freed up, they get educated, and that's what it's about for me as well. So
Mm,
those two, the game and the properties offering that's coming, that's keeping me excited, um, and also just helping others in the education of design. Those are three things close to my heart.
mm, mm. Man, no, Monet, that is something that's great to hear. And yeah, if you think there's a way that I can contribute, I would definitely love to be part of initiatives like that. But so tell me, Monet, on your side, how do you continue learning, and where do you get your inspiration from? Because this is something that is not only important for designers, but really for anyone that is continually wanting to get better where they are. How do you do that? Where do you get your inspiration, and how do you um
So
mm,
I think it's largely about wanting to learn, right? If so you continuously have to have a learning hat on. If
mm,
you open to learning, and then you open up possibilities. I'm
mm,
sitting here today and you are interviewing me today, or rather we are talking to one another, and that is a learning for me. It's a great learning for me.
mm,
um, I could, and you've got to show up, right? You've
yeah,
got to show up. don't be your second best. You've got to show up. You must be the A person, the A gamer, um, in whatever you tackle or whatever you want to learn. So
Mm,
you've got to have your learning hat on. Always have it on.
mm,
Be curious, and just be if you and that combined with um, learning, educating yourself also,
mm,
and the willingness to work hard. I think you're already 90% there if you have those qualities in your toolkit, if you like.
mm,
Um, and I think you shouldn't also try your best to not be bound by your immediate situation.
mm,
Once you just conform to that team you're on, you suddenly need to conform to that team and the deliverable at the end of that sprint for that team. And sometimes, from a learning point of view, it's not conducive. Yes, you will learn per that outcome at the end of that sprint, but you could have learned something around a kiosk, how does that interface work on a kiosk, for instance,
mm,
which is another team perhaps, and the ability to just get your hands dirty and be curious, work hard, the ability to just continuously learning, I think that will get you quite far.
mm. No, that's so good. So, wrapping up now. So, so you've worked on Crazy Planes, and no, I mean Playing Crazy, and there's plans to improve the game. But is there any other projects that you would like to get involved in the future?
I did lose you a bit, but I think you asked, are there
Oh,
any other
no, I can repeat the
projects?
question. No worries. I just wanted to find out if there's any other projects that you are excited about and you would like to be part of in the future.
So it's not per se a project,
Mm,
but I've started reading more on how to solve problems, right?
mm,
Um, and I'm seeing more and more different ways of problem solving. A classic example is the way Elon Musk look at problem solving.
yeah.
And I forgot what he calls it, but there's a certain method he follows where he breaks down the problem differently.
Mm,
And I'm looking into people like, how does Elon Musk do it? How does he? How does Bill Gates? Bill Gates has a series on Netflix. I forgot what it's called, but he before he first of all identifies a problem, a sector, and then a problem within that sector. He concentrates a lot on health, and
mm,
then he further goes down and you look in the health sector for problems, right? Sub problems almost. An example would be hygiene, toilet hygiene, right? And he then gets somebody in the world where this is an issue. Like in that series, I think the person is from Africa, Ghana, or one of the African countries. And he calls up that person, and then all they do in the sessions, they try to create the problem statement.
yeah.
And that for me is fascinating because what that what that ends up is further down the line, if you didn't understand your problem statement, or if you created the wrong problem statement,
Mm,
it has a ripple effect on what is being built.
mm,
So in turn, you end up building perhaps the wrong thing.
yeah.
Um, did you have to build anything for that matter? So 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 it's that type of thinking that I'm fascinated about, and I'm trying to adapt and adopt that style more into what I'm doing. So I wouldn't talk about, I wouldn't want say would want to get involved with projects, but more how do we start being more responsible? And this steps into starting being more responsible, because if we articulate the problems, if we understand the problem statement better, hopefully we build the right thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't end up a situation where we think, since we are digitizing, we so we chopping off less trees, so we good. However, we the carbon emissions that we need for those servers to run uh, outshines the amount of trees to be chopped up, then we are not being responsible at all. We being irresponsible, and it's that type of thing that I'm more and more um, trying to educate myself on. I mean, Google has a thing called Crazy Eights,
Yes.
and Microsoft has another way of doing it as well. So I'm fascinated in how you can successfully problem solve.
Mm.
Those processes intrigues me, and I'm just trying to educate myself across different points of views in the world. I mean, look at I've seen some really fantastic things coming out of Africa, for that matter. I
Mm.
started watching Dragons Den Kenya. Yes, the stuff that is coming out, it's mind-boggling. It addresses real needs. It's not pie in the sky. It's, for instance, somebody on a what do they call it, a scooter, Buddha, and services around people that deliver goods with a Buddha or a scooter. It's phenomenal. What do we, from an education point of view, I've seen some great things coming out of those incubators, if you like Dragon's Den, etc. So those we definitely, from a local and African point of view, we are doing the goods. We producing the goods. I think what often is keeping slowing us down is perhaps all the loopholes, because as a businessman would say to you, it's difficult to do business in Africa,
Mm.
and it's because of those sometimes processes that keeps you behind, the red tape, for instance.
Yeah.
um, but but definitely those, I'm curious in how people solve problems. That is something that, and the methodologies, different organizations and people use to solve problems. So
Mm.
that's something that I'm educating myself on continuously. um, if a project does pop up and it taps into one of the values of mine, then sure, I'll definitely look into it.
Awesome. Awesome. No, that sounds good. Monet, this has been great. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for making the time. But one more question before I let you go. For our viewers listening to you and interested in the work you're doing, the knowledge you're sharing with others, how do they get hold of you? Where can they find you on social media?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Morné Leander. I also have a WhatsApp group called UX Thought of the Day. You can also reach me on my email address, um, morneyleander@gmail.com. Those are the channels you can easily reach me on. You can just search my name and surname in Google as well. You will find me. And that's another way of reaching out to me. But I've also had fun. Thanks for the platform. I also thoroughly enjoyed it. And kudos to you, Satsi, and you and your crew for piecing this, crafting this together. It's appreciated.
Thanks, Monet.